Hi, my name is Vermell Hill. I am going to be presenting on the Microsoft Business Intelligence stack for the Microsoft BI Vendor Research Project. I'm going to start off with a brief history of Microsoft as a company. Then we'll move into a history of Microsoft's use of business intelligence and development of such. From there, we'll discuss the current Microsoft BI stack and their BI offerings. We'll briefly discuss how a company is using Microsoft's business intelligence services to work more efficiently. And finally, I'll give a brief synopsis of how I believe Microsoft is using business intelligence to enhance their company image. So to start, we will briefly discuss Microsoft's history as a company. So Microsoft was founded in 1975, April 4th, by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. They established their first operating system in 1980, and as you well know, they continue to dominate the technology arena. They are traded on the NASDAQ, and their initial public offering price was $21 per share. At their highest, they reached a stock price of $119 in 1999. So if you're smart, you got out and you got rich. Currently, their stock price is at $34.01 per share. The reason that's relevant is because obviously as a contending company in the technology arena, Microsoft has to stay current and on the leading edge of all technologies that are available with business intelligence, data mining, predictive analytics, being one of the most sought after professions and sought after technologies. Microsoft has had to make their mark in that arena. So what we're going to discuss next is Microsoft's development of BI historically. So they started in the 1990s, in the mid-90s, with analyst services, and it was in 1996 when they had their first online analytical product, and it was an acquisition from an Israeli company by the name of Panorama Software. In 98, they integrated that OLAP into their SQL database management system, and that iteration of SQL became the first DBMS with a built-in OLAP. From there, they moved into the new millennium and supported richer data analysis and cubing by adding data mining to their Microsoft BI their SQL Server interface, and they basically were able to use analyst services, I should say, become a market leader in analyst services with SQL Server. The next gen of SQL Server included enterprise level OLAP, and that's when Unified Dimension Model was coined, as well as UDM. As analyst services continued to grow, it did eventually become the foundation to the Microsoft BI stack. As you know, analyst services is performed for Microsoft in Microsoft SQL, SQL Server, and at that point you could host any number of models, including pivots, tables and charts, mining, analytics, everything that you can imagine. So what that's going to lead us into is the actual stack itself as they use. And they've got a BI platform, which, as we just discussed, is their analysis services. I am tripping over that, so pardon me. And they've got their end user tools, which is going to be primarily Microsoft Excel, which we'll discuss is a much more powerful tool than any of us could have ever imagined. And from there, we've got the delivery layer of the BI stack, which is primarily going to be SharePoint Server, which we'll discuss as being more than a simple document repository. Initially, we're going to discuss very briefly the current BI offering in SQL Server. And as we know, SQL Server 2012 is their latest iteration. They've committed to, from what I understand, a 3-year rollout. So we're looking at 2015 being the next iteration of SQL Server. SQL Server and Analyst Services, that platform allows you to do some, obviously, analysis, reporting, integration, data quality tests, predictive analytics, and warehousing. Analytics are used for trending. For instance, King Soopers card, which we've discussed, is not just used to give discounts. It's actually a way King Soopers can gather spending habits of certain customers and be able to offer them deals based on what they're most likely to buy. You can also look at trends like we did in our project and see what type of promotions work best. That's going to be more data mining than using predictive analytics. And so SQL Server opens up that entire platform to its users and the BI stack on the platform layer. We're going to move past the end-user tools. I'm going to come to that last. Let's go to delivery next. And delivery is going to be done with SharePoint. SharePoint is, well, it's not only done with SharePoint, but SharePoint is their primary form of delivery. You're looking at their core functionality. Sites, SharePoint sites, all of us are familiar with that. Lists and libraries, more of a repository functionality. And web parts where they have HTML integration. An example of that is currently at my job, I'm building an end-user intranet website. We've got our documents shared and collaborated on SharePoint, and what I'm tasked with doing is integrating SharePoint into the website such that it uses an HTML interface to share the content. After all, SharePoint is a content manager at its core. But SharePoint uses a Microsoft Office interface to build and edit content. So instead of one having to open up Microsoft Word document, a PowerPoint document, when they click on the link that's linked to the repository, it would interface with the HTML and show up in their browser. And that is how SharePoint delivers business intelligence. Now we're going to go to the middle portion of the stack and discuss Microsoft Excel. And the reason I saved this for last is because Excel is quite the powerful tool, more so than even I suspected. I had the opportunity to use Excel at a greater level than the average user would in undergrad in one of my computing courses, but it wasn't until I did this latest project and until I did the research that I realized how much you could do with Excel and how powerful a tool it is. I believe it is, quite frankly, the most powerful tool in the stack. And I know a lot of people would probably easily quickly go to SQL, but Excel is a lot more user-friendly. It's a lot more layperson-friendly, and as a result, it, in my opinion, becomes more powerful because of the newest feature with Excel when it comes to the BI stack, which, in addition to end-user analysis, pivot charts, pivot tables, they have what's called Power Pivot. And what Power Pivot enables a user to do is all of the Excel functionality from a Microsoft or from a BI standpoint, a BI perspective, but it gives you the opportunity to use standalone data as opposed to having to go to an external data source like we did in our project with accessing our SQL server development tools and having to pull data in from that database. You can house the data right there on the spreadsheet. Obviously, you can hold up to 4 gigs of data, which is a lot. Clearly, it's not terabytes, it's not petabytes. So what you're looking at is it gives you an opportunity to take snapshots of data, treat the spreadsheet itself as a data source, as a repository, without having to always connect to an external source. It gives you the opportunity to do some offline processing. Not that that's much of an issue anymore, but if you're in a situation where you do some offline processing, there's some powerful tools there that you can use in order to do that. So I think Microsoft Excel is one of the tools that one who would want to master the Microsoft BI stack should definitely consider getting their chops up in, as they say in music. So let's talk about next how one of a company by the name of Clout uses Microsoft's analytics to service their clients. Clout is a data repository, data services company that services vendors such as Facebook. So let's just take Facebook for instance. Facebook stores terabytes, nearly petabytes of data with Clout, and Clout has to give Facebook access to their data in an efficient method. So Clout is actually going to be the intermediary that is doing the data mining and the business intelligence for Facebook, where they're using Microsoft's BI stack. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief video with some greater detail about how Clout is able to do that.
Clout was founded in 2008. We're based in the San Francisco Bay Area in the Soma district. We have about 70 employees now, and our mission is to help people understand and leverage their influence. What we like to see is the industry better understand which networks are influential and how they're influential. The process begins when a user registers at Clout. They have the option of linking their account so we can track their activity across those accounts. Everybody thinks about Facebook being the social network, but if you think about it, there's actually hundreds of places where people interact with each other. We currently collect data across 15 different networks. We end up capturing 1 billion signals a day on over 100 million users. That's a whole lot of data. And it's not just the collection, of course, it's the analysis and it's the scoring and ranking of all that information to take raw data and make it into something that's actionable for our consumers, brands, and partners. Before we had a mashup, so every single piece of analysis had to be a separate data mashup. By putting the business logic in analysis services, we were able to expose all the data that was previously tucked away. So the investment was to bring the data together into one pipeline, into one scoring engine, so that all networks are treated equally. At Clout, I chose the best of both worlds, taking Microsoft Business Intelligence, a commercial software package which is inexpensive enough so we can afford it, and marrying that with open source technologies in the form of Hadoop and Hive. There's lots of other benefits to using a commercial product, and it comes to compatibility, it comes to standards. It's much more reasonable to spend money on commercial software that's proven and has a great ecosystem of support and tools that go along with it. I think that's why Microsoft is still relevant here, and relevant for Clout, in that the tool works well with big data. What's happened here is that the tools on the Microsoft side, when it comes to business intelligence and databases, have continued to advance and keep up with the innovations that are happening in big data. We're very excited about working with Microsoft in the future, jointly developing these solutions to really take Clout's offering to the next level.
Okay, so next I'm going to briefly demonstrate how you can use the Microsoft BI stack to install the Power Pivot add-in for Excel, and that is also going to be in a brief video. So here you go.
Welcome to another Power Pivot screencast from Michelle and Ed. In this video, we'll show you how to install the Power Pivot add-in for Excel.
Power Pivot is made up of the Excel add-in and a SharePoint server component. This video only covers the installation of the add-in for Excel. You do not need Power Pivot for SharePoint to use Power Pivot for Excel.
To use the Power Pivot add-in for Excel, there are a few prerequisites. First, .NET Framework 3.5 SP1.
If you're running Windows 7, this is already on your computer.
Next is Microsoft Office 2010. For best results, you really need the 64-bit version of Excel and the add-in. The 64-bit architecture provides the extra memory that allows Power Pivot to load multi-million rows of data. If you're using 32-bit Excel, you can still use Power Pivot to create BI data as a basis for data analysis in Excel, but you won't be able to load the extremely large data sets that the 64-bit architecture supports. When installing Office, be sure to install Office Shared Features. For Power Pivot to install correctly, at a minimum, make sure that you check the top level Office Shared Features box.
Let's begin the installation. I'm starting at the Microsoft Download Center and searching for Power Pivot. I double-click the most recent release. On the Power Pivot download page, I select which version to install. Since I've already installed the 64-bit version of Office, I select the 64-bit version of Power Pivot by clicking the Download button. Click Run to start the download. Click Next to start the wizard. Accept the license agreement. Enter your name and click Install. To complete the install, click Finish. That's it. I'll verify that the add-in installed by opening Excel and then clicking the Power Pivot tab on the Excel ribbon. The Power Pivot window opens over the Excel window, showing an empty workspace. Now I can start adding data.
For help with working with Power Pivot, including how to import data, please watch the Importing Data video series and read through our online documentation. Thank you for taking the time to view this video, and we hope that you found it helpful.
All right. Finally, what I'm going to do is just give an evaluation of how I believe Microsoft has used BI to this point. I think they've hit the nail on the head. My understanding is that BI, from a Microsoft perspective, is one of the, well, I should say Microsoft is one of the leading companies in BI development. To my understanding, what I've been told from CIOs is that if you can become proficient in Microsoft BI, on the low end of the salary scale, you can bring in as a consultant $50 per hour, and on the high end, upwards to $150 per hour. That's quite impressive. I mean, the reason we're in this degree program and the reason we're pursuing this master's degree and doing these studies is to enhance our career and, of course, enhance our income. So that's good to know. The other side to that is that it's obviously, it's not obviously used, but it's used more within the coasts. On the coastal regions, you're going to look at and see more Oracle used, but Colorado, the Mountain West, the Midwest, some of the South, they're starting to embrace the Microsoft BI stack. So depending on where you want your career to take you, that may be a discipline that you'd want to master as a professional. So that is all I have for you. I appreciate you watching this presentation, and I hope it was enlightening.